Dit programma is mede mogelijk gemaakt door Smerum Designvloeren Oosterwijk.
Goedenavond en welkom bij Interference-café. We hebben vandaag een heel speciale gast, namelijk JOSH MIZEREK. JOSH, welcome. First of all, you are now several years here in Tilburg. And you had a lot of good plays with Bo. And now you're playing with Dave as assistant coach. What is different between those coaches?
What's different? Yeah, anytime there's a change, anytime you have, there's always going to be differences. So, Dave is a fellow North American and a fellow American in that regard. So there's a certain mindset in terms of how to act as a professional, how to approach the game, and certain demands in that regard. It's not to say that that's drastically different than Bo. It's just Dave has a style and Bo has a style, and to each his own. And unfortunately, with Tilburg and the Trappers, Bo had success before I was even here, and so tip of the hat and kudos to him. And now with Dave being here, and we're poised in a second place to try and close out the last week and a half here. I'd say the similarities is winning and success.
Absolutely. But when I look at the practice, you see something different with Bo. Has Dave also more influence of the hockey?
I would say again that Dave coming in from Norway. And the type of team he had there, they were not always a top contending team. They were trying to fight for their lives to always stay in the top tier, in the top league. And over the years, he along with his teams were able to do that. Your question in terms of Swedish, I can't really say yay or nay on that. I would say it's almost a little bit more North American. And the approach of having a pattern and working through the practice and having build-ups where you have your warm-up, you have your one-on-one, and by the end you're competing 5-on-5. That I would say is a mainstay in Dave's practices.
You're still assistant coach from the first Tilburg Trappers, but you have a lot of more jobs here. What are you doing here also, besides the first team?
Besides the first team, I have involvement in some capacity from our skating school all the way up and some capacity to our first division team and everywhere in between. Does that mean I'm the head coach of each and every one of those teams? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean I'm always there, but whether monitoring a player, potentially to keep track of some of the younger guys. I'll use Marvin as an example, and using him with our top team, from down to the skating school, U9, U11, doing on-ice practices, keeping in touch with them. And whether it's team leaders or even coaches, those I'm also collaborating with them. That's with Tilburg. With the federation, I have titles of the U16 development coach. I'm an assistant coach with the men's program, and I'm an assistant coach with the women's program as well.
Do you have time to be at home?
I think it's probably better that I live in Eindhoven, because if I lived in Tilburg, I'd probably be here 8 days a week.
Yeah.
And so by living in Eindhoven, I am able to, get home, as you say.
Yeah, and take a couple of hours rest.
I try.
Because we know it from our live stream, you also look, every stream we give you, you are puzzling and you're looking at how to play the opponent the next time. So every game you look at it.
I enjoy that element of the game. I enjoy the modern hockey and from a coach especially. It's a coach's job to be prepared. It's a coach's job to be able to look through and find tendencies, and that's both for our opponents and for us. I know the modern day player doesn't. They have a limited attention span, and that's okay. So when it comes to film and things like that, they don't sit there and they won't retain that kind of stuff. With players, it has to be short, sweet, to the point. But for a coach, the analytical side, the X's and O's, whether it's game prep, whether it's practices, and as I just mentioned, all my involvement with the ages and different levels here and national program, that tactical thought process, it's interesting to me.
When we look back, when you were a player in Den Haag, was it also then?
Probably not as much. I think transitioning from a player into a coach, I can honestly say with where I'm at now as a coach, I'm probably heads and shoulders than when I first started coaching. But you got to cut your teeth. You got to learn the ropes. I think if you bring up me back in Den Haag, I think I was a very hardworking, competitive person and did whatever it took to win. And as a player, I think that's a fair assessment of myself as a player. And I think as a coach, maybe a bit more level-headed, a little bit more take a step back. I have my moments, don't get me wrong, but I think overall I'm a little bit more poised as a coach.
You are now more relaxed than as a player. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what we can
fair.
say also.
That's a fair scouting
But
report.
also you could play for a long time. For example, Chris Stanley played a lot of years also now with the Lindau Islanders.
Yep. And again, the evolution of the game, the process of the game, and let's bring up Jaromir Jagr and playing almost 50s, right? Modern day training methods, modern day taking care of your body, working out, those sort of things. Back in the day when hockey was first started, NHL, those guys were working car salesmen, painters in the summer, and that was back when training camp was a training camp. And nowadays, training camp, it's not as intense. It's a little bit more of a slower crescendo. Whereas back in the day, like, you had to have a training camp because guys were not doing hockey-related things year-round.
But we still do have that also in our team also, especially also in Den Haag or Heerenveen, are players who have to work on day base.
That's very true. But I think the higher-end players in this country, the guys that are competitive, and whether it's a national team program, whether it's a Benelux top team, or obviously the boys in our locker room, a tip of the hat, kudos to them, because they do find a balance of work and conditioning or getting to the gym. Also, in the same hand, we're obviously not in the levels of Sweden and the U.S. and Canada and whatnot, but with where we are and where we're at, I think the guys do a decent job of finding a balance. Absolutely,
especially the last years when we went to the Oberliga North, it went better and better.
Agreed, and that was part of the process, part of the learning curve. It was new, and I know that a lot of the people involved early on used the resources and talked to teams even in the DL2 and talked to get to know such bus travel, food, all those things go into this process.
Only away games, more than 40,000 kilometers in a year, in the season.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. And
to the average Dutch person, yes. So for myself, I went to university, and that was a 12-hour drive from home. Obviously, I didn't. And then my first year pro, I started in Florida and then went to Louisiana. Those were 2-day drives. Yeah. And that's just to get there. Then you talk about the bus rides within the club itself.
Yeah. But it's all the North American players who say, Oberliga.
It's not too bad.
It's not too bad. It's just 500K.
Yeah, exactly.
It's unbelievable. But if you have to work, I can remember a guy, we came from Leipzig and we were late, early in the morning. And he gets out of the bus, gets in the car, goes to work.
Time management.
Absolutely. Could be better.
Yeah, kudos to him.
When we look at this season, also last season, Corona is a terrible thing. Also for players, but also for no public in. What were you thinking after we had Corona? What were you thinking when Ian Meidres came in the locker room and said, "Sorry, coaches, I have to stop"?
Yeah, it's a chink in the armor, so to speak. You know, Ian has been a staple of the Tilburg Trappers for many, many years, pre-Oberliga years, you know, and that for Ian's sake, it was unfortunate. You know, for us as staff and as like, we can't control that. And the unfortunate thing, at least for Ian, I think Ian would have, I wished, and I think he wished he could have gone out on his own terms and been able to find a way to have a complete season and be able to close it out that way. And that just goes to show and tell you like how bad it really is.
It was serious.
Yeah. And for hockey, for us as fans, we can be selfish a little bit and go, man, I'd be nice. But you also got to take a look from the other side of the fence, and for Ian's sake, and for quality of life, family, kids, and the rest of his days as a working man, he's got to be able to do his job as well, and not be hamped up and sitting on a couch going, I can't move, kind of thing. So
it was necessary, otherwise he would stay on the ice.
For sure.
Likewise, we had a good goalie backup.
We have a depth chart, and we try and keep tabs on guys, and Johan is also, aside from this year and previous years, he's at least practiced, and he's gotten to see some pucks from these guys. So with the out of one player, that means there's opportunities for other guys, and kudos to Johan, and look forward to seeing him develop and seeing him grow, because he's still young, of course.
Ruud is a good substitute of Ian, of course. A good season this year.
Yeah.
But for Johan is special.
Yeah.
It's very special for him.
Of course.
Starting in the Beneliga, then now in the first team.
Yeah.
Someone's luck, someone not lucky.
Well, like you said, like kudos to Ruud as well at taking the torch and running, and a tip of the hat to him. But also with Johan, luck, timing. You know, it's not that Johan can predict when and if these opportunities will present themselves. Johan, just as a young player, has to be hungry and has to be willing to learn. And it's great that he has gone from where he's gone in terms of his, let's say, his playing career, but from his youth, and being able to branch out and go to Germany as a DNL player, and then with where he is now, coming from our first team and now on to the Oberliga team.
It was nice to see his first game, how he was so nervous. But he played well that first game, but the first shot on goal was always... But that belongs to the game, and he's working on, so he will be there. But he's number one Ruud's playing a great season this year.
Of course, I think there's, with experience, we can talk about experience all we want, but you got to play the games, and you got to get the ice time, and you sit there and try and prep a guy for his first game, but it's just it just has to happen. He's got to work through those emotions and the highs and the lows, and hey, they're goalies. They know that they're not out there to score goals.
No, they're only there to stop pucks.
Exactly.
When we look at the players at this moment, our top scorer is Brett Bulmer. It's a good season till now. Played 43 games. So 34 goals and 49 assists. Not bad. But when we look at the total top scorers list, we have Brett on place 7. Then we have Max Hermes on place 15. Diego Hofland on 17. And Raymond van Schuit on 46. 4 players with the top 50. When I look back in the early years, we were 1, 2, 3, or at 4 or 5 players in the top 10. Is that enough?
I mean, if you go off the stat, you're going off stat. So what place are we in now?
We're still second.
We're still in second. And I think what you said, COVID is an awful thing, like just the season in terms of the ups and downs. And I'm not saying from our COVID standpoint, but more so our injuries of ups and downs. And you look at our lineup, and I think it wasn't until about 2-3 weeks ago that we finally had a full lineup.
Yeah.
And I think it was that game that
we lost Wouter.
That Bartek and Tyne went down in that. And so, yeah.
But that's also out of COVID, of course, but that's a normal risk. An injury is normal.
Injuries, of course, but I think for us to not have the option of a full lineup the entire season potentially brings in elements of consistency or line mates, or trying to, instead of having to juggle lines because of this, that, or another. And there's always an acclimation period. We found a way to win games. We found a way to be a top team. And I think with playoffs around the corner, all those numbers that we've just talked about outside of where we finish go back to zero. And it's a new fresh start. And so you can go into the playoffs with a new mindset. And if you as a player are struggling, it's a new mindset. And if you're a hot hand, hopefully you continue to do that.
Yeah. I'm asking you this because a lot of people don't understand how the line works. How important is it to have 3 forwards, 2 defense, and a goalie, and then in the same line?
That's pretty standard in terms of Hagen. Like a power play might have 4 forwards and 1 D, but the consistency and within what you just said, the 3 forwards need to find the chemistry, and typically the 2D need to find chemistry, because based off the line changes and all that, with us playing 4 lines of forwards if we can, and if we get 6 or 7 D going, the 2D and the 3 forwards are not always the same combo. But the importance is the 3 forwards, that they're playing off one another, and that obviously we like to generate offense as much as possible, and we need those forwards, what you just mentioned, the stats wise in terms of top 50. We're always hopeful, and we're always kind of tinkering with lines and hopefully get a spark, if you know what I mean. And hopefully in the playoffs we'll get that.
Let's play good playoffs, and that's forever. Hope with a lot of public in it. And,
exactly.
That will be it. Just thank you for this.
My pleasure.
See you soon on the Ijsweg on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Sunday, or Saturday.
Mondays I try and
Monday you're free.
I try and stay in Eindhoven as much as possible on Mondays.
You just work 6 days a week. Thank you for this, and a whole lot of luck in playoffs.
My pleasure, Ad. Thanks for having me.
Dit was weer een uitzending van Interferenscafé en graag tot de volgende keer.
Dit programma is mede mogelijk gemaakt door Smerum Designvloeren Oosterwijk.